It was another gray morning in New York City. The streets were alive with people rushing to work, holding their coffee cups, talking on their phones, living their busy lives. But in the middle of all that noise sat Emma Parker, quiet and almost invisible. She sat at her usual table in a small coffee shop on Fifth Avenue. Her hands were wrapped around a paper cup, the steam rising into the cold air. She wasn't really drinking, she just liked how the warmth felt against her skin. It was the only warmth she felt most days. Emma worked as an assistant in a big company downtown. Her boss, Mr. Grant, shouted more than he spoke. He never said thank you. Her co-workers laughed together, but never invited her. Every day felt the same: wake up, go to work, get ignored, go home. No one really saw her. She used to have dreams: painting, traveling, writing a book one day. But now, all those dreams sat buried somewhere deep inside her. Life had taught her that quiet people get stepped on, and kind hearts get broken. That morning, as she stared out the coffee shop window, she whispered to herself, "Maybe this is just my life now." Then something strange happened. A man sitting by the window got up to leave. He was tall, wearing a dark coat and a soft smile. Emma had seen him before. He came to the coffee shop often, always reading a book, always alone. As he left, he dropped something near her table. It was a small folded napkin. Emma picked it up, ready to throw it away, but when she unfolded it, she froze. There, written in neat handwriting, were 5 simple words. "You deserve to be seen." Her heart skipped a beat. She looked around quickly, but the man was already gone. She stood up, tried to look through the window, but he had disappeared into the crowd outside. Emma sat back down, holding the napkin like it was something precious. The words echoed in her mind: "You deserve to be seen." She didn't know why, but those words made her eyes burn. No one had ever said something like that to her. Not her parents, not her friends, not anyone. For the rest of the day, she couldn't stop thinking about it. Even at work, when her boss yelled about missed deadlines and papers piling up, she touched the napkin in her pocket and felt a strange calm. That night, as she got home to her small apartment, she placed the napkin on her bedside table. The words glowed faintly under the yellow light. She smiled, just a small smile, but a real one. For the first time in months, she felt like maybe she mattered. The next morning, things felt different. The air didn't seem so heavy. She wore a blue sweater she hadn't touched in a year. It made her feel a little more like herself. At the office, people walked past her like always. But she noticed something: she wasn't invisible. She was allowing herself to be invisible. Maybe she could change that. Around lunch, she opened her desk drawer to grab her notebook and froze again. There, lying neatly on top of her papers, was another note. Her fingers shook as she picked it up. This time, it said, "You're stronger than they think." Her heart began to race. Who was leaving these notes? How did they know where to find her? She looked around the office, scanning every face. Her co-workers were typing, chatting, laughing. No one seemed to be watching her. It could be a joke, she thought. Maybe someone was playing with her. But deep down, something told her it wasn't a joke. Someone meant it. She slipped the note into her pocket and tried to focus on work, but her mind wouldn't stop spinning. 2 notes. 2 messages. 1 stranger. That evening, she went back to the same coffee shop. She sat at her usual table and waited. The same music played, the same barista smiled, the same people came and went. Then, just before closing time, she saw him again, the man from before. He sat by the window, reading a book. The same calm smile. Her heart beat faster. She wanted to say something, but fear held her back. What if he thought she was weird? What if he said it wasn't him? Minutes passed. He got up again, placed a few dollars on the counter, and walked toward the door. Emma stood up. "Excuse me," she called softly. He turned, surprised. His eyes were gentle, calm, like he already knew what she was going to ask. "Was it you?" she asked, her voice shaking a little. "The notes." He didn't answer right away. Then he smiled and said, "Sometimes people forget their own light. I just wanted to remind you." And before she could say another word, he nodded politely and walked out. Emma stood there, frozen, heart pounding. Who was he? Why her? When she looked outside again, he was gone, lost in the busy streets of New York. But that night, as she walked home under the streetlights, something inside her felt lighter. For the first time in years, Emma Parker didn't feel invisible. She didn't know who that man was or why he cared, but those simple notes had changed something deep within her. She didn't know it yet, but this was only the beginning. Because soon, she was going to discover that the stranger who saw her wasn't just kind. He was impossible. The next few days passed like a quiet dream. Emma couldn't stop thinking about the man from the coffee shop, the one who left her those notes. His soft smile, calm voice, and kind eyes stayed in her mind. She didn't even know his name. Only that he noticed her when no one else did. At work, she started to change in small ways. She began speaking up in meetings, something she had never done before. Her boss still shouted, but this time, she didn't shrink away. She stood straighter. She began to believe those words, "You're stronger than they think." And then, just when she started to think maybe she'd never see him again, another note appeared. It was early morning. She went to get her coffee before work, same as always. When the barista handed her the cup, Emma noticed a napkin under the lid. She pulled it out and read the words written in familiar handwriting. "Keep walking. You're on the right path." She froze. Her heart began to race. He was here. Somewhere. Watching her. She looked around the coffee shop, scanning every corner, but he wasn't there. Or maybe he was, and she just couldn't see him. The words gave her courage again. Maybe she wasn't alone after all. That evening, she stayed late at work, finishing a report. The office was quiet, only the hum of computers filling the air. As she gathered her things, she noticed another note stuck to her computer screen. "You don't have to be perfect. Just be real." She smiled without meaning to. Whoever he was, he understood her. Every message felt like it came at the perfect moment when she needed it most. But there was one thing that didn't make sense. How did he know where she worked? Emma's mind filled with questions. Maybe he had followed her that first day. Maybe he had friends in the office. But deep inside, she didn't feel scared. The notes didn't feel creepy, they felt kind, thoughtful, safe. She wanted to thank him. The next day, she made a decision. She went to the coffee shop earlier than usual and sat at the same table by the window, the one where he always sat. She brought a small notepad and a pen. On the first page, she wrote, "Thank you. Whoever you are, you made me feel seen. I'd like to meet you. Emma." She placed the note on the table, weighted it down with her coffee cup, and waited. The minutes passed slowly. People came and went. Her coffee grew cold. She began to think maybe he wouldn't come. Then, just as she was about to leave, a shadow fell across the table. Emma looked up. It was him. The same calm eyes. The same kind smile. He wore a gray sweater and carried a small notebook in his hand. "Hi," she said softly, nervous but hopeful. "Hi," he replied, his voice warm. "I didn't mean to scare you with the notes." "You didn't," she said quickly. "They helped me. More than you can imagine." He smiled again, and something about that smile made the room feel lighter. "My name's Daniel Reed," he said. "Emma Parker," she replied. "I know," he said gently. Her heart jumped. You know my name." He nodded. "I heard your boss shout it once. You looked like you needed someone to remind you you're more than what he says." Emma stared at him, unsure what to say. No one had ever cared enough to notice. They talked for a while about life, about work, about how lonely people can feel even in a city full of millions. Daniel spoke softly, as if every word carried weight. He said he used to believe people were too busy to be kind, but then he decided to change that one small act at a time. "Sometimes," he said, "people don't need saving. They just need someone to tell them they matter." Emma smiled. "You've been that person for me." Daniel looked down, almost shy. "Maybe you just needed a reminder." When they finally said goodbye, Emma felt something new, something bright. Hope. For the first time in a long time, she wasn't afraid to look people in the eye. But as she walked home, something strange tugged at her thoughts. Daniel had no company ID when she saw him at the office earlier that week. She had checked, his name wasn't on any list. And now that she thought about it, none of her co-workers had ever mentioned a new employee. The next day, she asked around. Hey, do we have someone named Daniel Reed working here? People just shook their heads. Nope, never heard of him, said one. You sure you're not mixing names, said another. Her stomach turned. She checked the company directory, nothing. No record. No email. No employee photo. But she'd talked to him. She'd seen him. He was real. Wasn't he? That night, she sat on her bed, holding all three notes in her hands. Her fingers traced the words again and again. Maybe I imagined him, she whispered to herself. But she couldn't believe that. The warmth in his eyes, the kindness in his voice, that couldn't be her imagination. She looked out the window at the city lights, her heart caught between comfort and confusion. Somewhere deep inside, she felt it, this wasn't over. Daniel Reed wasn't just a kind stranger. There was something different about him. Something she didn't yet understand. And soon, she was going to find out. Emma didn't sleep that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Daniel's smile, calm, gentle, kind, and the words he had said to her, sometimes people just need someone to tell them they matter. But how could someone who changed her life so deeply, not exist? She needed answers. The next morning, she went to work early and checked every office record again. She searched the employee list, the security log, even the guest register. There was no Daniel Reed anywhere. It was like he had never been there at all. Her heart raced. Maybe she made a mistake? Maybe she heard the name wrong? But she could still hear him saying it in her head. My name's Daniel Reed. At lunch, she went to her co-worker Lisa. Hey, remember the guy who was sitting near the back office last week? Brown hair, kind of quiet. Lisa frowned. You mean that new temp worker? Emma's eyes lit up. Yes. Him. Lisa shook her head. Oh, honey, there hasn't been any new temp worker this month. Emma's stomach turned cold. No, I talked to him. He was here. Lisa smiled kindly but looked confused. Maybe you saw someone visiting? But I've been here every day. I never saw anyone by that name. Emma forced a smile and nodded, but her heart was pounding. She couldn't understand it. She had spoken to him. He had touched the coffee cup, left notes, smiled at her. That wasn't her imagination. She left work early that day, the noise of the city blurring around her. She went straight to the coffee shop where it all began. The place was busy, filled with chatter and the smell of roasted beans. Emma walked to the counter and asked the barista, Hey, do you know a man named Daniel Reed? He comes here often, tall, quiet, reads by the window. The barista's face changed. She looked at Emma for a long moment before answering. Ma'am, she said softly, are you sure about that name? Yes, Emma said quickly. Why? The barista sighed. There used to be someone like that. Same description. He sat at that window every morning, reading. She pointed to the table by the glass. But, he passed away last year. Emma blinked. What? The barista nodded sadly. Car accident. He was crossing the street right outside. Everyone here remembers him, quiet guy, always kind. Left notes for people sometimes. Emma stepped back, her heart pounding in her chest. The world suddenly felt smaller, quieter, heavier. It couldn't be true. She had talked to him. Just 2 days ago. Her voice was a whisper. You're sure? The barista nodded again. I'm sorry. Emma turned slowly toward the window, the same spot where Daniel used to sit. The chair was empty now, sunlight falling softly across the table. A cold shiver ran down her spine. She could almost see him sitting there, reading his book, smiling at her. That night, Emma sat in her apartment, staring at the napkins, all three of them spread out on her bed. You deserve to be seen. You're stronger than they think. Keep walking. You're on the right path. Her hands trembled. Could a ghost write these? Could a spirit reach out to her like that? She didn't believe in such things. She was logical. Practical. But then again, she also knew what she had felt. The kindness. The warmth. The peace. She wasn't scared, not even now. Instead, she felt something strange, something beautiful. Maybe Daniel had been gone from the world, but somehow, his message was still here. Days passed, and life began to feel normal again. But just when Emma started to think she might never hear from Daniel again, another note appeared. It was on her kitchen table when she came home from work. She hadn't left it there. Her breath caught as she picked it up. The handwriting, it was his. The note said, "Don't stop living because of what others see. Live because you can." Her eyes filled with tears. She sat down, clutching the note to her chest. She whispered, "Daniel, are you still here?" The room was silent, but she felt something like a soft breeze brushing her cheek, warm and gentle. Maybe that was her answer. That night, Emma stood at her window, watching the city lights flicker below. She thought about the man who had changed everything, a stranger who showed her kindness when no one else did. She didn't know how he appeared, or why he was gone. But she knew one thing for sure. Daniel Reed had seen her when she couldn't see herself. And because of him, she had found her strength again. She whispered into the night, "Thank you." Somewhere, she liked to believe, he heard her. The next morning, Emma woke with a calm heart. The sadness had turned into something brighter, gratitude. She got dressed, looked in the mirror, and for the first time in years, she didn't see someone invisible. She saw someone learning to stand tall again. Someone who mattered. And as she left her apartment, a small piece of paper slipped under the door. Emma bent down, smiling softly as she read it. "The light you feel now, is yours." She pressed the note against her chest, tears falling quietly, but this time, they weren't sad tears. Because finally, Emma understood. Daniel wasn't gone. He had simply done what he came to do, remind her that she was never invisible. And now, she could see herself. The morning sun touched the tall buildings of New York, painting them gold. Emma stood by her window, holding a cup of coffee in her hands. For the first time in years, she wasn't rushing, worrying, or doubting herself. The city outside looked the same, but something inside her had changed forever. Daniel's words still echoed in her mind. "The light you feel now, is yours." She smiled softly. Maybe she didn't need to understand how he had appeared. Maybe he was an angel, or just a kind soul who had found a way to help her from beyond. Whatever the truth was, he had reminded her of something she had forgotten, that her life had meaning. That morning, she took a long look at herself in the mirror. Her eyes weren't dull anymore. Her shoulders weren't slumped. She looked like someone learning to love life again. At work, people noticed the difference. "Emma, your presentation yesterday was great," said her coworker Lisa. "Thanks," Emma said with a warm smile. She had spent all night working on it, not because she had to, but because she wanted to do something well. Even Mr. Grant, her boss, seemed surprised. "You've been doing good work lately," he said, trying to sound casual. "Thank you," she replied calmly. She didn't need his approval anymore. But it felt nice to hear it. Inside, Emma felt stronger. She was no longer the invisible girl in the corner. She spoke with confidence, and she smiled more. People started talking to her, listening to her ideas. But her biggest change wasn't at work, it was in her heart. One evening, while walking home, she stopped in front of an old art supply store. The smell of paint and canvas drifted through the open door. She hadn't touched a brush since college, but suddenly, her hands itched to create again. She walked inside, looking at the bright colors, the brushes, the blank canvases. The shopkeeper, an older man, smiled. "Looking for something special?" he asked. Emma nodded slowly. "Yes. I think I'm ready to paint again." She bought a small canvas, a few brushes, and a box of paints. That night, in her quiet apartment, she opened the box and stared at the blank canvas for a long time. Then she began to paint. At first, her strokes were unsure, shaky. But soon, they grew stronger, smoother. She painted the city skyline at sunset, the same view Daniel had once seen from the coffee shop window. And there, sitting at the window in her painting, she painted herself, not small or invisible, but bright, surrounded by light. When she finished, she sat back and smiled through her tears. For the first time, she felt proud of herself. Weeks passed. Emma kept painting after work, small pieces at first, then larger ones. Each painting carried a message of hope, kindness, and self-worth. It became her way of saying thank you to Daniel. One day, Lisa visited her apartment. When she saw all the paintings, she gasped. Emma, these are amazing. You should show them to people. Emma laughed shyly. They're not that good. Lisa crossed her arms. They are. There's an art gallery downtown that supports local artists. You should try. At first, Emma hesitated. She had always been afraid of showing her heart to the world. But then she remembered Daniel's words, "You deserve to be seen." Maybe he was right. A month later, Emma stood in the middle of a small art gallery. Her paintings hung on the walls, bright colors, warm light, faces filled with emotion. People walked around, smiling, whispering, taking pictures. Her hands trembled, but in her heart, she felt calm. This was her light, the one Daniel helped her find. As she moved around the gallery, something caught her eye. A painting hung on the far wall, one she didn't recognize. She walked closer, heart beating fast. It was a painting of her. Emma, sitting by the window of the coffee shop, staring out into the gray morning. Her eyes looked tired but kind, her hands holding a cup of coffee. The painting was signed. Daniel Reed. Her breath caught. Below the frame was a small card that read, "If someone ever finds this, tell her she matters." Emma covered her mouth, tears spilling down her cheeks. He had painted her long before she even realized her own worth. The gallery owner came over. "Beautiful piece, isn't it? A donation from the late Daniel Reed's collection. He used to paint people who looked lost, said he wanted to help them feel seen." Emma smiled through her tears. "He did," she whispered. "He really did." That night, as the gallery closed, Emma stood in front of Daniel's painting one last time. She whispered, "Thank you for seeing me. For reminding me to see myself." And when she turned to leave, she felt a soft warmth behind her, like someone standing near, not touching, but watching with quiet pride. For the first time, she didn't feel alone. The light was with her. Always. She walked home under the stars, her heart full. The city lights shimmered around her, and she smiled. She no longer needed the notes. She no longer needed reminders. Because she finally understood the worth she'd been searching for was never missing. It had always been inside her. And now, she would spend her life helping others see theirs. 2.1 year later, the world around Emma looked the same, but her world inside had completely changed. The cold, gray mornings she once hated now felt peaceful. The streets that once made her feel small now made her feel alive. She still passed the same coffee shop on her way to work, but now, she always stopped there not to hide from the world, but to start her day with gratitude. The napkin with the words "You deserve to be seen" hung in a frame on her living room wall. She looked at it every morning, a reminder of how far she had come. Emma Parker wasn't invisible anymore. She had learned to live, to create, to shine. Her art had grown beyond what she ever imagined. The small gallery where she first showed her paintings had become her second home. Each painting she made carried hope, bright colors, open skies, and gentle faces full of light. People who came to see them often cried, smiled, and said her art made them feel understood. One day, during an art show, a young woman approached her. She looked nervous, holding a small notebook close to her chest. "Are you the artist?" she asked softly. "Yes," Emma said, smiling. "Did you like the paintings?" The woman nodded quickly, tears in her eyes. I. I've been feeling lost for a long time. But you're painting the one with the girl sitting by the window, it made me feel something. Like maybe I still matter." Emma's heart melted. She gently took the woman's hand and said, "You do matter. You always have." The woman smiled through her tears. "Thank you." And in that moment, Emma realized something beautiful. She had become what Daniel was to her. She was now the stranger who helped others remember their worth. Weeks later, Emma held her first solo art exhibition. It was called "The Light We Forget." Every painting told a story of sadness, healing, and hope. Reporters came. People wrote articles about how her art felt like a warm hug. But for Emma, it wasn't about fame or attention. It was about passing forward the gift she had once received from a kind stranger who saw her when no one else did. At the center of the exhibition stood one painting, her most personal one. It showed a quiet man sitting at a coffee shop window, looking out at the sunrise. His face was peaceful, almost glowing. Below it, she placed a small note that read, For Daniel Reed, the stranger who reminded me to live. As the night went on, people stopped to admire that painting. Some asked who Daniel was, but Emma only smiled and said, someone who believed in kindness. When the crowd thinned and the lights dimmed, Emma stood alone in front of Daniel's painting. A soft breeze moved through the open window. The curtains shifted gently, though no one else was there. She closed her eyes and whispered, I hope you see what you started. For a brief moment, she felt it again, that same warmth, like a hand resting softly on her shoulder. A quiet peace filled the room, and she smiled. Maybe it was her imagination. Maybe it wasn't. But in her heart, she knew Daniel was proud of her. Life became brighter, slower, and kinder after that. Emma spent her days painting, teaching art to children, and volunteering at community centers. She started small art therapy classes for people who felt lost, the kind of people who once reminded her of herself. Whenever someone said, I'm not good enough, she would smile gently and reply, you deserve to be seen. Those 5 words had once saved her, now they were saving others. One quiet evening, she returned to the same coffee shop where it all began. The same chairs, the same smell, the same soft music playing in the background. She sat by the window, Daniel's old seat. The city lights glowed outside, just as they had that first day. On the table before her, she placed a folded napkin and wrote in simple handwriting, you deserve to be seen. She left it there when she finished her coffee. As she walked out, a young man entered and sat at the same table. He noticed the napkin, opened it, and smiled. Emma looked back once, seeing his small smile reflected in the glass. Her heart felt light. And she realized something: the kindness Daniel gave her was still alive, still moving through the world, one person at a time. That night, as she returned home, she stood by her window and looked up at the stars. The framed napkin on her wall glowed softly in the lamplight. She whispered, I see myself now, Daniel. Thank you for showing me how. And for the first time in her life, she didn't feel like the girl who faded in the crowd. She felt like someone who belonged, someone who mattered. Because once, a stranger had shown her her worth. And now, she would never forget it.